Okay. So today is the 29th of December, 2021, and I'm Bernie Herman, and I'm here with Dianna D. Spady, who has a long history of cooking, food, and just life on the eastern shore of Virginia. And this is one of our conversations in the kitchen, and where it goes, we'll see. But I'd like to start with you sort of telling us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I'm 71 years old, and I've been cooking for someone just for all my life. I got it from my mother. My mother used to cook at a truck stop, used to be there in Bayview. And cooking now is not too much different than the cooking we had back in the day, because a lot of things that we had back in the day, it's the same thing now, but they didn't dressed it up and kind of changed the name of a lot of things. Because, fatback, or what we call it now, strickling, that was for seasoning, and people use that as almost like a main entree now. And another thing was like whole cake bread, and now the whole cake bread has dressed up and changed into focaccia. And everybody cooked greens and beans and potluck soup and poor man's soup. They had poor man's soup because they didn't have enough of one thing or enough, so they dumped it all in the pot together.
So how did you learn to cook? You say your mother taught you?
Yeah, my mother cooked, and then when I was working, when I was going to Machapunga School, I got a job, I started working in the cafeteria, and I loved it. I feel good by cooking. And, and I wanted to do my own cookbook one day, but after last year, or this year, I had a stroke, and when I was in rehab and stuff, that's all I thought about is, when I get home, I'm gonna cook this, or I'm gonna fix this. And cooking, it relaxes you. It relaxes you. And cooking is easy, it's fun. And when you put your love and heart in it, and I enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
Before I forget to ask, what was your mother's name?
Helen Gunner.
Okay, and this was down at Bayview, or?
Yeah, they used right down the corner. There used to be a truck stop there, and then she worked there. Then she also worked at Paul's in Churiton.
Yeah, so she worked. If she worked at Paul's, she would have worked with. I'm trying to call the name now, and it's right there. The people that took it over after Paul's.
I can't remember that.
She married a Downing from Oyster. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
But so when you were little, your mother started to teach you. So how
Yeah.
did that work?
That was okay. I try to remember everything she would do, and try to keep it in my mind to pass it on myself. But cooking it's good. You can do so much. The less you have, the more you can invent things to cook. I can take your recipe and I'll go by your recipe one or two times. Then after that, it's no longer your recipe. It's mine, because I didn't change it. I didn't put my icing. I scrape your icing off, and now I got mine on there.
Okay. So you want to write a cookbook?
I do.
Okay. So what are some of your favorites you're going to put into this book?
Well, biscuits, sweet potato biscuits, buttermilk biscuits, and what you can do with leftovers. Also, potluck soup. I'll tell you how to make focaccia, and the difference in focaccia and what did I say it was?
Hoe cake bread?
Yeah, whole cake bread. It's focaccia you do whole cake bread you do on top of the stove. Focaccia you do in the oven. Yeah.
So hoe cake bread is a very old bread.
Very old, very old. People did that when they didn't have sliced bread. They would mix the flour and pinch of salt, pinch of sugar, and it's like fried bread.
Yeah, I've heard it called, I think, spider cake bread too. Is that from the old skillets that had little legs?
So everything had, and now everything is, all have, now everything now is dressed up with new clothes and stuff on, but still the same.
Okay. So thinking about how things are still the same, and the fact that you grew up here, and your family has deep roots here on the Eastern Shore, do you think there is a style of cooking for the Eastern Shore?
It's home cooking, because we didn't know nothing about TV. I guess we did know about TV dinners and stuff like that, and now they come up with fat-free this and fat-free that. We didn't know nothing about fat-free. Pig meat, just like they say collard greens. If they ain't greasy, they're not good. That's collard greens. And back in the day, they killed pigs, and I don't know where they come up everything fat-free, and they say fat not good for you, so.
And yet here we are.
And here we are.
So, but we won't tell anybody.
No.
So tell me more about this style of Eastern Shore cooking. For somebody who is from away, has no idea, if you could just build it out a little bit, explain it some.
Well, like I said, the bread and the greens, and just like everything back in the day, we did homemade, scratch. Everything was scratch. Everything was scratch. Everything was scratch. The biscuits and that, we didn't know about no biscuit in the store. We didn't know nothing about box pancakes, and we always had the carnation dry milk. We didn't have the regular milk back in the day. And night times, if we didn't have, we had fried fatback. A lot of times people had fried fatback and put them in a slice, a biscuit. You know, that was dinner. Now it's a lot different now, but everything there was made from homemade and scratch and love.
So did your family slaughter pigs, keep a pig and slaughter it?
Like I say, my father worked at, which is Budweiser now. It was knee-high back in the day. He worked there for over almost 60 years. He worked there before I was born. And no, they didn't. But we had friends that slaughter pigs and stuff like that. And we would get the homemade sausages and all the pig meat, stuff like that. And we had a big freezer. Mom would get it and freeze and stuff like that.
So this was all down in Bayview in that area?
I grew up Cape Charles.
Okay, so you grew up in Cape Charles.
The big city of Cape Charles.
What was Cape Charles like when you were growing up? Because it's sure not like that now.
Cape Charles, they had a lot of stuff in Cape Charles. They weren't as strict in Cape Charles like they are now. And they had the stores, and every Friday you could go to Cape Charles Bank, and there was somebody selling peanuts, or you would go down where the laundromat at, and there was a guy down there selling fried crabs and stuffed crabs and stuff like that, or devil crabs, and they were so good.
Really?
Devil crabs are good.
So do you have a recipe for devil crabs?
I don't have a recipe. But see, that's the only thing about my recipe. I don't measure. I'm from the old school. I don't measure. I can just look at it and tell when it's right.
So what goes into your devil crab?
I use white meat, the lump, and claw meat. Claw meat is very sweet. And obey, Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of hot sauce, and obey, and mayonnaise. Don't make it You make it and you stuff it back in the crab. So you take the shell, like when you steam crabs, you gotta take a brush or old toothbrush and get all up in there and get it cleaned out. And then you pack it, then you put it in your shell, then you roast it.
Okay.
Devil crabs are very good.
No breading of any sort, or?
Very little bit of breading. Very, very little. Even when I make crab cakes, I don't put a lot of crab filling in my crab meat because I want to taste the real thing. When you go to some place, you can almost tell. That's why I don't like to eat out with so much, 'cause I can look and tell if it's homemade and all this stuff that a lot of restaurants selling now, they're getting from Cisco or whatever. It's something that is put together.
So when you worked, I want to come back to ask you about cooking in the schools, but when you think about cooking now, as I know that you taught Amy Brandt a lot about cooking Eastern Shore style, and so I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you educated Amy.
Well, like I say, was see back in before I started working down in bakery, they would take bacon grease. The manager out front got on me about it and throw it away. You don't throw bacon grease can be seasoned. You can season your vegetables. They're wonderful to save for greens. I use bacon grease and I fry my clam. If I want to have clam cakes, I fry my clam cakes in bacon grease. That's just me. That's what we used back in the day. We used bacon grease or lard, SK lard, and that made the best fried chicken. We did that in school too. Used the lard, the great big 25 cans of lard for fried chicken.
And so you made clam cakes. Now, everybody has their own idea of what the best clam cake is, the best clam fritter.
Fritter, yeah.
So what's your idea of the best clam fritter?
Very little bit of seasoning. Some people put flour, then they put all this other stuff in it. I use onion diced. I don't grind my clams. I take my time and I take the kitchen scissors and cut my clams up. And then I pour the juice off it and mix some Bisquick with it. And then after I get my just right, I fold my clams in with my onions. So when you're mixing something, you don't mix it, you fold. That's why you still get the good texture and stuff of it. I fold everything, and it tastes better. And when I fry my clam cakes or clam fritters, I fry them in bacon grease, because you still got that fresh, you still got a taste. You still got that taste. It's not fried in oil where you don't have any taste, but see, to each his own. It all depends what you grew up on.
So do you make a thick clam fritter or a paper thin one? Or?
In between. Like I said, everything I fix is eyeball. Eyeball. And you can buy the frozen clams, that's to you, or the jar clam. I'd rather take my time and open my clams up and cut them up. Because see, back in the day, after my husband got down, I will open them and he will sit there with the scissors and cut them up. And I would turn around and fry them.
And so these were those big seaside chowders.
Yeah, chowder clams, yeah.
Didn't have to put any salt in them.
No, Seaside is the best thing, you know. No salt whatsoever.
Oysters too.
Yeah, oysters, oh my goodness. You can just eat them raw, and they're good. They're good.
And you prefer seaside oyster?
Oh yeah, Seaside, it got more taste, but Bayside are bigger. But I'd rather have the taste than the size.
Yeah. No, that makes good sense.
Yeah.
So did you make oyster fritters?
Oysters fritters, and also you can, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we always made oyster stuffing. You mix your stuffing up like you regularly do, pour some of that oyster juice in your stuffing and take drop your clams in and take your hand and just fold. Fold. That's the main thing when you're mixing. You fold. See, back in the day, They didn't have electric beaters. You take a bowl and that's old school.
Also keeps the oysters from breaking.
Right. You just fold your oysters in, and then you just lay it in and you just pat it down and pour a little bit of that juice in so it won't get dry, and it don't take that long to cook.
So is this a bread dressing?
Yeah. A lot of people down when I came back home from Detroit, a lot of people didn't do cornbread dressing. They do bread dressing, and a lot of people back in the day we did bread. We had leftover bread. We didn't have the Petrus Farm stuff. You had your own.
And so you made them. Now, as I recall, you were a great maker of yeast rolls.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my grandmother, every Sunday morning, she made gracious, yeast rolls every Sunday morning. And I always had to go take my father some and the pastor some yeast rolls. And see, back then you made your rolls on Saturday night. And then Sunday morning you got up early and you worked them off. But see, back in the day, we always fixed our Sunday meal on Saturdays. We always had a big Sunday meal.
Can you tell us more about the big Sunday meals?
Oh, yeah. And then on breakfast, we always had salted fish. You know how you put your fish down to salt, and macaroni and cheese and rolls. That was for breakfast. Then dinner time, we have, chicken or beef or something like that. I can remember when we had chicken for Sunday, my father would always go out there and cut the head of the chicken. He'd fry from here to 13. And that's fresh chicken. Then he'd get the hot water and dip the chicken, pick it. Now that's fresh chicken.
It sure is. So I'm very struck by the breakfast of salt fish that is soaked out and then fried in bacon grease, I think.
No, well, sometimes she fried it, and then sometimes she just boiled it more with onions and poured a little bacon grease over it. But a lot of people don't do that. They used to get the big jars and salt your fish down during this time, during the summertime, and put them away where it's cool at, and have them for a Sunday breakfast. Yeah.
So I've heard of folks doing fish and pancakes for Sunday breakfast, but not fish and macaroni and cheese. And I've heard of folks doing fish and fried pears or fried apples.
Oh, fried pears. Oh, my goodness. They're so good. I used to be heavy, but after I had my stroke and I had thyroid trouble, I lost fried pears and fish. Oh, my goodness. That's good.
So you would have those two things together, fried, and that would be a breakfast.
Yeah, but that was a breakfast, but they may call it now brunch, because you had some breakfast stuff and some lunch stuff. So it's brunch.
Okay. So would you have this before church or after?
Before. And then if you want something left over, you ate something like that when you came back. But we ate good back then. We may have been poor, but we ate good.
So did you all ever make fish stews or fish chowders where you would take the frame, the bones, and big pieces of drum and slow cook that?
My mother did. She would take the head and stuff off of a drum and put it in a pot with potatoes and onions. Potatoes, onion, I think she dropped some carrots in it. But she didn't put it on top of the stove, she put it in the oven. Just like now, you can do fish in the oven, put it in the oven with potatoes, onion, and lay bacon on top and sprinkle a little, and the grease from the bacon will go down there, and you have, it's like baked fish and potatoes, that with drumfish.
So one of the things that I know that you did in your life was to cook in the schools. And school lunches are not what they used to be. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about how you, first of all, came to cook in the schools, and then about cooking in the schools.
Well, when I came back home, I looked for a job here and there, and I couldn't find it. Then they had an open for cafeteria manager at Cheriton Primary School, and I applied for it, and I got it. And we would give the kids breakfast, and then after that we would start on lunch, and we always made our homemade bread, or we had pizza. We made pizza, and we had a lot of government stuff back then that we had to use. We made our own macaroni. That cheese back then was good cheese. Or they gave us pork in a can, and we made a gravy for the pork and add onions to that, and serve that with rice. The kids love it. The stuff they serve the kids now.
So could you tell me a bit about the routine of being a cook in the schools? You wake up in the morning, you know you're going to go to school and you're going to cook, but most people don't know what that work was like, how your day began and how it ended.
Well, you always had your menu, and when you were making out the menu, you always had to put in what from the government that we got that we were going to use. They sent us fish sticks, or we made our own spaghetti sauce. Like I said, we made bread every day, or we had pizza for breakfast, or we had to make sure we used that stuff up and make sure it was balanced. You always had a vegetable, a meat, and your starch. But what they give the kids now is...
So you get there, and
gotta get
you're
ready
going to
for
make bread.
Well, you got to get your breakfast out the way first.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of kids that didn't have breakfast. And sometimes we made oatmeal, that juice and that milk. And then we start on our bread. And then we start planning, what else was on the menu. And it was hard sometimes, but it was good for the kids, because a lot of times they didn't know what a balanced meal was. And we made sure they got what they need.
Yeah, so you cleared away the breakfast, and then...
After we cleared away the breakfast, we start looking on the menu for the next day. Is there anything we can prep or pull out the freezer, and so you can thaw for the next day? You always plan ahead for the next day. If you got, even at home, when I was cooking, if I had, say, fried chicken for the next day, my chicken would be out, I would wash it, season it, put it in the refrigerator till the next day.
Okay, so where does the bread fit in, the making of the bread?
Well, it don't take that long to make rolls.
Okay, so these were rolls, not loaf bread, but rolls.
Rolls.
Were they like yeast rolls? Or?
Yeah.
Because I remember in school when those rolls started to bake, and it didn't matter where you were. It's like all of the heating and cooling came from the kitchen. And so every kid in that school started to drool.
Take them out after you work them off, let them rise good, you work them off, and then you put them so they can rise again, then you put them in the oven. Then when soon they come out of the oven, you take your brush and you brush them down with butter. So the butter will go right, through them. And butter, it's not like homemade rolls or homemade bread.
So did the schools ever make things like clam cakes for lunch? So it was really limited to the ingredients that came from the government.
Right. And you order some things, but first you got to see what Uncle Sam had said. You have to use that first. And then after you use that, then you plan your menu, and plan your menu around your government stuff. And then after you plan your menu around your government stuff, anything else that you needed, you put it in, and just rotate your other stuff. You have to rotate.
Okay, so coming up, you learn to cook from your mother, and you have recipes that go back to your grandmother and others, and those are really classic Eastern Shore recipes. And then you're working in the schools and you're getting ingredients that come from away, from the government. They're brought in. How would you say the knowledge of learning to cook from your mother, from what your grandmother did, made you a good cook with what came from the government?
Well, you got to realize you always have to make do of what you got. And if you don't have this, you got to make it so that it will work. You know what you got. If you got oatmeal, like say, use your dry milk. You don't have to have canned milk. Use your dry milk. And what else we get from the government? That pork. You take that pork, you heat it up, and then you drain the grease off of it. And when you drain the grease and the stuff off of it, you mix it up and make a gravy. You pour that on top of it, add onions to it, and just put it in your oven to finish cooking. Then you put it to your steam table. Make it so that I'm not gonna feed you nothing that I don't want to eat myself. That's the main thing. You have to want it to eat yourself. And that's love. If I love you enough to make sure you enjoy it, I want to love it, make sure I enjoy it. And I'd love to feed somebody and they say, oh, it tastes so good.
Yes, it does. So to go back to the idea of an Eastern Shore of Virginia style of cooking, you would place that in this idea of making do, of whatever is on the land, whatever comes your way. And those would be the ingredients.
Yep.
But the knowledge to do that, can you say a bit about the knowledge of making do?
It comes from here. It comes from the heart.
Okay.
It comes from the heart, and it comes from your taste. Now what? And you got to have flavor. Like now, a lot of times they boil or steam vegetables and stuff with not eat it plain. That's fine. But back there we use butter or some kind of seasoning meat. What I do a lot of times, I may have some seasoned meat and I boil it and until the water turns like a milky white. Then I take that out and put my vegetables in. And then I take the meat and I slice and I put it in the oven so the grease can come. You never threw nothing away. You always make sure what you had, it was stretched. It was stretched and go. And your leftovers. You can, just like spaghetti. You can take spaghetti and have spaghetti one night, and then the next night you can always take and have baked spaghetti or lasagna spaghetti. And lasagna spaghetti is just like lasagna, but instead of using lasagna noodle, you're using your spaghetti. And when you make your spaghetti sauce, you can use your ground beef. You can use some of your breakfast sausage if you want to, or if you have something like fresh ham or what they call now like pork butt, that will go in. You can chop that up and put that in your spaghetti sauce. All that stuff is like potluck. Potluck.
And that knowledge was part of what you brought to cooking in the schools. Making a little bit go a long way.
Long ways, and you have your taste.
So that growing up where everything counted, where everything mattered,
Yeah.
was absolutely essential to the style of cooking that you
Yes.
brought to the schools, as was love, as was care. So that brings me to a question about how you see the relationship between food and faith.
And faith.
And faith.
Well, you got to have faith in yourself, knowing that, hey, I can do it, or I want to do it, and I love to do it. You have to love what you do. You can't go into the kitchen without the love and that you know, I'm going to make this taste good. I'm going to make it taste good. And it's so much in cooking, especially in the school system, because you're going to make sure the kids got what they want. Because half time when the kids went home, they didn't have a hot meal. And if you have certain things left over, you can make a pot of soup and an open-faced grilled cheese sandwich, something like that. And that's filling. And the kids appreciate it. Then sometimes, which I got in trouble for, some kids came to school that didn't have lunch money. And we made sure the kids, got something to eat. Because how can you learn from or remember, and every time you start writing and your stomach start growling, you're hungry, and you know you're going hungry, you're not going to have nothing to eat besides, which I hate, oodles or noodles.
So, in that relationship between food and faith, it's almost as if you see your cooking as part of a ministry, that you're
Yes.
ministering. Could you build that out a little bit for us?
Well, if you love God, you have to love His children. And when you love His children, you got to make sure you have to take care of His children. And like I said, there's a lot of kids that, especially right now, don't know what a hot meal is, besides Thanksgiving or Easter. I mean, kids want to eat just like you want, even up to the old folks, the nursing home. You have to help take care of, feed for them. It don't take long to make gravy. It don't take that long to do mashed potatoes. But a lot of people now use the instant mashed potatoes, or the potatoes you can go in the store and get now that it's already made. I mean, it's okay, if that's what you want, but
It's not the same.
and like I said, like the government gave us a lot of rice. You can do a lot with rice. You can rice and gravy or rice with this. And you also can take your time and take some of that powdered milk, take some raisins, some sugar and flavor. There's your rice pudding. And eggs. There's your rice pudding. And kids love that. Old people love stuff like that.
So then part of the style of cooking of the Eastern Shore of Virginia is about care. It is
Care
about,
and love, yes. And you may do for what you got. You didn't have to have filet mignon. You didn't have to have pork chops. You didn't have to have this. You can take anything. You can just look in your refrigerator now and say, oh, this will go with this will go with that. Or microwave stuff.
As we look forward to the end of the year, that means New Year's Day.
Yeah.
What did your family have on New Year's Day?
Collard greens and black-eyed peas.
And how do you make your black-eyed peas?
Well, you're supposed to use ham hocks or pepper joel. I think, remember, Mama used to use a ham hock. You boil that ham hock till your water turns a certain color, then you take it out. And after you got to soak your black-eyed peas the day before and pick all the other beans out. And then you throw your black-eyed peas in that water and add water, come on top and cut the light down so they can cook slow. You take that ham hock, you sit to a table, split that skin, and pick the meat out of it. And then when after the ham hock get your black-eyed peas getting a certain way, you just take it, that chopped meat and stuff, and put it in there. Then you make your cornbread and collard greens. Well, this time of the year is the best time of the year to get collard greens. After frosting hit them. After frost hit collard greens, they're so tender and they're so sweet. People say sweet, yes. They have a good taste to them. And that's one thing I'm glad if I had my stroke, I'm glad I still can do is cook my collard greens. So I get my collard greens, take my time and pick them. You don't pull all the stem out because a lot of the stem got more of your vegetable. You just pull it up to a certain point. And then you cut them up. I take my kitchen scissors and cut them up. Then I wash them. Then I steam them down, like that.
And after they're steamed,
I put them in the pot with my smoked meat. And then after they get cooked in there, I take that smoked meat out my oven, pour that grease over top of it. And sometimes I use my bacon grease too. I love my bacon grease.
I'll be right over.
Yeah.
You're killing me here.
Yeah. Well, collard greens are good. That's my favorite. But turnip greens are good too, but you got to look at your greens carefully. You got to check for wormholes and all. With all greens, you have to check for wormholes. Check for the white dots. You may see sometime on green we call lice. You got to wash that. But when you get your greens all cut up and put them in that water, you sprinkle salt on it. So any kind of bug that's in your greens, it'll float to the top. And then you just wash it and put it in another sink, then it goes in your pot.
Well, I didn't know about the trick with salt. That's a good thing to learn.
If any bugs is in your greens, you can see it. But it all depends where you buy your greens at and from. I get my greens from one place, and that's down to Pickers Harbor.
Oh, WT.
Yeah, that's my buddy. Yeah.
He grows good greens. I usually get mine up here from Miss Marilyn Sharp up at the corner on Occohannock Neck Road.
Well, they come from WT too.
Okay. So all roads lead to WT and his greens.
Yeah. WT is a very nice man. His greens, his watermelon, everything is good.
His peaches.
Yes.
You talked about black-eyed peas, and I don't know, do you ever remember anybody here growing a pea that was like a black-eyed pea but was all black?
I'm not that old.
Okay. I'm reaching way back.
Way back.
And I'm always hopeful. Somebody will have said, oh, we kept that pea in our garden until last week.
Yeah, well, you can buy, oh, that's not a pea. It's like the black bean.
No, they're exactly like a black-eyed pea, but they are all black and a little bit smaller, and they grew them on the Poorhouse farm here in the 1890s. And they grew them in between sweet potatoes and corn. Wow. So the runners would go up the corn, but they would fix nitrogen for the sweet potatoes and the corn. So they worked as a fertilizer as well as a food.
Now, I remember cranberry beans. I remember that, and I remember not too long ago I had cooked some, been a couple of years ago. They were black-eyed peas, but they were green.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what they call. I think they call it like a field bean.
Mm-hmm. Field peas.
Yeah, field peas. But a lot of people like the black-eyed peas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love them. They're good to go.
And also back in the day, when you cook the collard greens, sometimes they would take some of that pot liquor. They would drink that. They said that's where all your vitamins are. And sometimes they would take that pot liquor and pour it in another pot and drop cornbread dumplings. I remember that.
So, and those are a cornbread dumpling is a puff dumpling. It floats, not like a slippery dumpling.
No, I like my slip. You take that and you take a spoon and drop that in there. It's cornbread.
So, did you ever hear of people making something like that with peas called peas and doughboys or little tiny dumplings?
Yeah, Yeah, that's good. Fresh peas. Yeah.
So did you ever make that, or?
I can't remember. But I didn't make them that small. Cause when I make my dumplings, I make them from scratch every now and then. But my favorite way to make dumplings is biscuit. A lot of people use biscuit for making sweet potato biscuits. I don't do that. When I do my sweet potato biscuits, I bake my sweet potatoes. Because when you're boiling the syrup out of them. But when you bake them, the syrup be right there. But when I be baking my sweet potato for my sweet potato biscuit, I always take at least 2 sweet potatoes out before they get all soft. So when you make them and the sweet potato biscuit, you can see chunks of sweet potatoes and you say, oh, this is homemade.
Did you ever make it with Herman's?
No. I tasted a Herman pie one time, but
Too rich.
Herman's are good though. Yeah, Herman's are good.
I remember there was a time when somebody over here tried to make Herman potato chips, and that didn't work out so well, I don't think. But can't fault a person for trying.
Yeah, I mean, you can try anything, just, but Herman pie, that's okay.
So as you grew up here in Cape Charles, is the seasons always matter here? Spring, summer, fall, winter. So what were the highlights of the seasons for you?
During the summer when fish came out, and you wait to hear that man say, fish, you used to go around the truck selling fish, or sometime it was another man, we used to call him the milk, we had milk delivered back in the day too. And this man, we used to call him the milkman. He would come back and sell watermelons, cantaloupe. They'd come back and, and they were good watermelons and cantaloupe. I mean, back in the day, it was so much stuff. And then when they were selling fish and stuff, it was fresh. It was fresh.
So the fish truck, because there's one that still goes around a little bit up around Exmoor, I think. I've seen it. But the way you describe it, it makes me think that the fish truck driver, the fish truck man, and I guess it was almost always a man,
Yeah.
would shout. And do you remember what he would shout?
Fresh fish, fresh fish, fresh fish. And there were fresh fish. And I learned how to clean fish then. And my husband even built me a fish stand out there by the garage. And I could clean my own fish, take that knife in the back, special spots, that's my favorite, and cut down the back of it and lay that spot wide open. And when I was working out Bay Creek, the guys would have the fillet of fish. I said, oh, y'all ain't doing nothing. I said, I can do that. Make that little mark with that. I can fillet a fish. I learned how to do a lot. I'm always willing to learn how to do something, especially in the kitchen.
So how did you learn to clean a spot? Because that's the old school way, is to clean them down the back.
Yes. Well, my dad used to clean them in the stump, down the front. And then my husband would say, take that knife from his mouth and come on down and lay them wide open. Especially a nice, and they'd be good too. Take that and throw it in some salt, cold water, and then you take them and you wash them in plain water. That salt, cold water, draw the blood and stuff out of it. Yeah, I can clean fish.
And you would fry those spots.
Oh, yes.
And did you fry them head and tail on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It used to be a guy, elderly guy down the road, called him Sharpville. He sold so many fish. I say, you know how I want mine. Don't touch my head and don't touch my tail. Leave them and fry them just as crispy and good with flour or just plain cornmeal, but I mix my flour and cornmeal together.
And so you like them fried hard.
Yeah, not real hard, but nice. Yeah, now that's making me hungry. Oh, fresh fish.
So, but spot's not the only fish. What other kinds of fish did you like?
Oh, that was the main one. What else did they have? Croakers. I ain't care for croakers. And drumfish. It was this man that used to work at Budweiser with knee-high along with my father. He would always, somebody would always give him drum. We had so much drumfish when we was coming up. I ate so much baked fish. The man always would give my daddy baked fish. The daddy said, somebody give you something, take it. And say thank you. If you don't want it, you share with the next person. That's how we do.
Yeah, so sharing is a big part of the
Yeah.
style of cooking on the Eastern Shore.
Yeah, if somebody come and hand you a whole bushel of, say, tomatoes, if you don't want them, what you gonna do, sit there and let them go bad? No. You share them with the neighbors. And then when they get something, they share with you.
That's why people do that even now. So how does this make Eastern Shore of Virginia food and cooking and sharing different from other places? What makes our place special?
The love and looking out for one another. But in the cities and stuff, a lot of people didn't do that because they were scared to take stuff from somebody. But Virginia is, sometimes they're like one big family. Everybody looking out for everybody else. Hey, Miss Susie, I got a bushel of crabs or a bushel of this, or you want some? Yeah, baby, bring me some over. See?
That's how it is with oysters and
Oh, yeah.
clams and everything else. But back to fish for a minute. Did you all ever cook toads?
Oh my gracious, yes. Yes, swelling toad. That is one of the queens of the sea. And they're not, people say, oh, if they're not clean, I don't want, but they're not hard to clean. You get you a nice glove, cut his head right along there, and take that, pull him out.
And all the waste and bad stuff goes in one hand and the delicious part goes in the other.
Yeah, but then you turn around and you get your knife and pull the side little thing off, or they got a black vein that you pull that out, put that down, and if you clean, we clean them outside and put it down in a pot with cold salt water, and then you turn around and clean the other part, take the slime or whatever's off of it, and take the other stuff, you throw it in a bag and take it to the dump. And that's good eating too.
So fish are the summer for you. What about the fall?
Well, October, which I didn't get none this year, I love October pears. And October pears are, and they're like fried pears. But out back in my house, we had what we call a pear tree, apple pear tree. It's shaped like an apple, but it tastes like a pear. And that was good for fried too. See, back in the day, everything was either fried or baked. But now they say fried fruit ain't good for you.
Fried, baked, or stewed. You know, the other thing that people would do. So,
stewed chicken.
So special foods would be things like beef. That would be something really special to have. But the food of every day would be things like fish or oysters or clams or occasionally a chicken or...
Chicken most was on Sunday. Sunday was a special day. You had your fish, you had your fresh fish, and you had spots, toes, and they had, sometimes they had what they call butterfish. I ain't like that. Or croakers. I ain't like croakers. But they ate a lot of baked fish. And if you didn't have fried chicken, you had stewed chicken. And that's with celery and carrots, onions. You put that on a nice pot and put it on the stove, let it cook down. Or Mama used to fix what we call fricassee chicken. It's like smothered chicken, and have that with rice.
Oh, that would be good. Mm-hmm. Before I forget, I want to come back, is that you worked with Amy Brandt.
Yes.
And you taught her a lot. Now, she came from the other side of the bay. She's trained as a classic French chef.
Yes.
So you had to teach her Eastern Shore cooking. How did that go?
Oh, well, we learn from each other. But like I say, if from the Eastern Shore, a lot of stuff that they cook French or people here didn't like that. They wanted down home cooking. And when I was working, we used to have brunch every Sunday. And I had my collard greens out there, my macaroni and cheese, and my macaroni and cheese, which I don't like. Macaroni and cheese be dry, macaroni and cheese supposed to be creamy. I made my macaroni and cheese nice and creamy. And then we had our collard greens, we had fried chicken or another kind of beef or another kind of, omelets. Then you had your eggs, your French toast and stuff like that.
But the collards and the mac and cheese, I bet, were about the first thing to go.
Mm-hmm. And they said, well, how you making macaroni? I said, I don't measure. I guess it's bad, but that's me. I don't measure. I can tell you what all go in it, but I don't measure. I got, oh, that looks rice. I get my spoon, taste it, yeah. And I do not like macaroni. They say, well, you just cut. You don't cut no macaroni and cheese. It's creamy, probably creamy. Stouffer don't have nothing on me when I make my macaroni.
I'll believe that. I was going to ask if any of the old school students ever came back to you to talk about how important your cooking was for them.
See, not on the school. When I was at Fresh Pride in Exmoor, in somebody's kitchen cooking, and I saw this young man. I say, I bet you don't remember me. Yes, I do, Miss D. I remember them biscuits and eggs. I used to fix eggs, breakfast, with the biscuits, and you have your eggs, then you had your bacon or scrapple. And I also did a year old to Bay Shore. They had a wagon over there, and they were selling stuff. I worked there. I like cooking. I wish I could still do it. Well, I can do it, but I don't. I love cooking.
Well, it certainly sounds like it. But you're not just about cooking. There is a lot more to you than that. And I was wondering if you might tell us a bit about some other parts of your life.
Well, it's not too much more what I do. Well, I don't do much now. I took care of my husband until he died. And I had to, he had lost one leg, then he lost other. Then I had to learn how to use the Hoyer lift and all that kind of stuff. And then I had to fix special stuff for him because he was on dialysis. He couldn't have this, he couldn't have that. And that's it. Cooking is me. That's my love, is cooking.
That's your legacy.
Yeah, it's cooking.
And it shows. Well, I always give you a chance to ask me questions. So you can ask me a question or two.
What else is it besides cooking? On the Eastern Shore, if you don't drink, I don't gamble, I don't chase men. So, I love to cook. And I was telling somebody, I said, I would like to find me a job now with some elderly person that I can fix their meals and, nourish them back. Something that is healthy besides a McDonald's or Hardee's. Give them something that You can do so much with things. Take chicken and breast and make chicken a la king or chicken salad. Or take your chicken breast and you can stuff them. Or what else can you do? Neck bones. That's another Eastern Shore thing. You can have neck bones and spaghetti. Spaghetti is what we call now is yolk. Take your neck bones, you soak them, get the blood out, and you boil. And I put my beefy onion soup mix, and then I put my neck bones on and let them cook down. And while that's cooking down, I got another pot that I do my spaghetti in. And then in your bowl, you got your spaghetti, then you got your meat, then you got ketchup, raw onion, and Worcestershire sauce. Hey, that's a meal. It's something different. Or you can take neck bones where they get got meat nice and meaty, and you can have baked neck bone with barbecue sauce or eat them plain. It's so much you can do now besides McDonald's and Hardee's.
Could you say a little more about yak or yak? I've heard of this.
Yak.
Most people won't know what this is.
I know. You can take, not only with neck, you can do it with chicken. You boil your chicken or your neck bone. You got your spaghetti. The only kind of spaghetti I eat is angel hair. And you put it in your bowl. Then you put your meat in. Then you put your onions in. Worcestershire sauce. Then you pour some of that juice from your meat over there.
Where did you learn to make yak?
Well, I seen different people. I had it, and I didn't like the way theirs tastes. Like I said, I took and dressed my own up. You can give me something, then I taste it. This don't taste right. I'm gonna turn around and make it again, and add my 2 cents to it, and make it better. It's like a recipe. Just like say for the 7-Up cake, which everybody make. I took that and I didn't like the way it was. So I didn't like the flavor. So now when I make mine, I may use a little bit of the instant pudding mix, the vanilla or the lemon. It gives it a more foundation and it gives it a better taste. You can taste the lemon part in it. And you can take a cake and take it and with wax paper and slice it up, put it in the freezer, and that's what you can have for morning coffee. If you want something, you can have a slice of cake and a cup of coffee.
You know what I think about when you mention cake are pound cakes. And if a person has one recipe for a pound cake, they generally have 10. Can you talk about pound cakes and why they're so popular?
Because you can do so much with a pound cake. You can take it, like I say, with coffee. You can take it and for a late night snack, put ice cream on it. Or if you got, which I haven't did in years, homemade preserve, strawberry, especially strawberry preserve. And that's something in between you can have. I never try to have cake and fig preserve, but fig preserve is good too. It's 2 ways of making fig preserve. You can have it where your figs is all grind up. You can have it so where your figs come out in, pieces, and you can have it so you can have fig preserve with a slice of lemon in it. And that's good with a cup of coffee, like for an older person, on a biscuit, like that.
Or a piece of pound cake.
Or a piece of pound cake.
So I'm curious about pound cakes because there is so much room to experiment with different kinds of flavors and proportions. Even though it's supposed to be a pound, and a pound, and a pound, is that you can still work within that.
Yeah, and you just cut it, just cut the recipe down, and cake will still come out good. And after you make it, you don't want to give nobody, just slice it up, wrap it up, and then put in a freezer bag. Then you got your pound cake. But pound cake is good just by itself.
So is it sort of the most basic cake that people make?
Yeah, 'cause you can take a pound cake and take you some, grate you, not grate, but squeeze lemon juice and scrape the sides off and put a little bit of confectionery sugar and let it all melt down. It come right, and you can pour over top. Then you got glazed cake. Or you can take a pound cake recipe and put it in your round cake pan, or that 1, 2, 3, 4 cake. Put in your, and then you have a cake with icing. Or you can change the flavor of a pound cake. You can have a lemon pound cake. You can have the vanilla pound cake. You can, like I said, that's what I try and use instant pudding, because that will help change the flavor of it. You can do so much with cake.
So it sounds like pound cakes fit right in with making do. And
You can even make a sheet cake and flip it over and ice it, decorate it, say happy birthday or whatever. You know, because once you eat a birthday cake that's made in a sheet pan, it's pound cake anyway.
oh, I like that. I like the way that pound cakes fit in with the larger Eastern
Yeah.
style, Eastern Shore style of cooking.
Yeah, you can do anything with it. Like I said, you can put it in your round cake pans, then you can have your coconut cake, or you can have a chocolate cake with icing, or you can have a strawberry cake or whatever, any flavor that you want. You can change the flavor, but you got to play with it more than one time.
So what you've described is there was a while back we were talking with another person, and what came up was the truth of things. And so it seems to me that if I was to ask you, what is the truth of Eastern Shore cooking? It's love, it's caring, it's sharing, it's making do, it's all of those.
Yeah, making do with what you got.
So, and that's the truth of it.
Yeah, because, back in the day, they didn't say pound cake, they call it sweet bread. Yeah, they call it sweet bread, and that's back in the day. So I don't know if I'm older than you or you older than me, but I think I'm older than you.
I'll be 71 next week.
Well, I was 71 2 weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
Well, happy birthday to you.
And with that, we'll see if there's a question from Sally or Mike, who are sitting here with us.
Well, I have a question. Did your dad cook, or did your
Yeah.
brothers or your granddaddy?
My dad did cook. My dad made the best chicken and dumplings.
Okay.
And he did same way I do. You do. He used biscuit and flour. That's what I use. Biscuit and flour. And while your chicken is boiling, you take some of your chicken out. You add celery and carrots, and then you add your dumplings. And that's your meal right there. You got your meat, you got your vegetable, and you got your starch. But never let. That's almost like pot pie.
And then I just have one more question. So if you can think back to when you were 8, 9, 10-year-old, and it was your birthday, what would have been your birthday meal? Like what would you have asked your mom and dad to cook for you for your birthday?
I always like seafood, anything seafood. I love seafood.
Fried oysters, clam fritter sandwich.
Yeah, now that's good. Now that's good.
With yellow mustard.
No,
No yellow mustard on your clam fritter sandwich.
no, I want mine's plain.
Really? So would you have it on white bread?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can always, if you want to, you can add like One time I made clam, I add jalapeno peppers to it, and we add bacon to it. And then one time down, I'm trying to think what we call it seafood cakes. We had clam cakes. You had clam cakes and you add shrimp into it. And then you had scallops. And you mix all that and you fry it. And then you more brown and then you put it in the oven, let it finish cooking all the way up. That's a seafood cake.
I like the sound of that. Well, Miss Spady, thank you so much for being
more
here
than welcome.
today.